Let's talk about subtracting real numbers in this section. After this lecture, you will be able to find the difference between the two numbers. We will add the numbers with a different sign, meaning two numbers when they're negative, and when they're different sign, one positive, one negative. We will use the order of operation, subtracting the real numbers. We will take some fraction as well, and we will translate the word and phrases that indicates the subtraction. Let's look at the first example. Let me get the pen here. -5 and -8. You want to look this problem as an adding problem. So I will circle this as a -5. I will circle this as my -8, and there is a plus sign which is invisible. So the rule for adding says when you're adding the numbers with the same sign, the answer stays negative. And go ahead and add the 5 and the -8. Both in the terms of absolute value. 5 plus 8 will give you 13. Let's look at now the second rule of adding. I have 9 minus 4, which you can easily do as the answer is 5 if you look this as a subtraction. If I'm looking this still as an adding problem, then I'm going to look this as -9. Let me get the pen here. 9 and then -4, and the plus sign is invisible. So 9 and a -4, when the two numbers with a different sign, you are subtract, which will give you 5. 9 is a bigger number in the terms of absolute value, so the answer stays +5. So 9 minus 4 is 5. If you look this as a 9 plus -4, it will give you the same result of 5. Let's try now 11 minus 15. So if I look this as a 11, and if I look this as a -15, I'll still apply the same rule as I did in the previous example. I'll subtract the 11 and 15. That's the difference is 4. 11 and -15 in the terms of absolute value, 15 is a bigger number, which is a negative. So in this case, the sign stays a -4. So basically in subtraction, we are still using rules for adding real numbers. It's just that the plus sign is invisible. Let's look at this example. Whenever you have two negative signs inside the parenthesis, the first thing you want to do is switch that a negative and a negative sign into a positive. So here, once I change my sign to positive, the parentheses are gone. Now 10 plus 2 is simply 12. Let's try another one. Here I have a -1, negative, a parenthesis, and a -7. The first thing I'm going to do, the two negatives in the parenthesis, I'm going to switch the sign to plus. The plus sign is visible here. So I have two numbers with a different sign, one a positive, one a negative. So according to the adding rule, I'm going to subtract, which is giving me 7. Now I have to decide my sign. 8 is a bigger in terms of absolute value, so the answer will stay +7. Here's another example. We're moving to the order of operations now, so I'm going to take care of the parentheses first. So here I have 4 and 8 minus 16. So first I take care of the parentheses. I have 8 and then I have a -16, and the plus sign is invisible. So 8 plus -16 will give me 8 as a difference. The sign will be -8. So I will keep my -8 still inside the parenthesis. Now you can see that the two negatives with the parenthesis, I have to switch the sign, which makes it a positive. And then 4 plus 8 simply will become 12. Let's try one more like that one. 9 minus 3 minus 15. First thing you want to do is 9 and -3, and then you have plus sign invisible. So 9 and -3, the difference is 6 because 9 is a bigger number. It's going to stay +6. And then you will simply do 6 minus 15. 6 minus 15, same idea. You have 6 and a -15, plus sign is invisible. So go ahead and subtract first, and this time the sign will stay the negative as 15 is a bigger number in terms of absolute value. So the final answer will be -9. For this problem, you can pause the video, and then when you're ready, you can come back and check your answer with mine. Okay, so let's see this one. So I'm going to do the parentheses first. So the -8 and the -5 here, same sign, plus invisible. So this is going to be -13. And here the plus sign is already visible. So -7 plus 3, the difference is 4. 7 is bigger, so this will give me -4. So I did both the parentheses. So let's see my next step. So I have -2 plus as is, then that's how I got the -13, the negative sign, and then from the second parenthesis I got -4. If you see this in the second one, the negative and a negative here, I'll switch the sign and make it a plus sign. So this is how I get -2 plus -13 plus 4. -13 plus 4, plus sign is visible. Go ahead and subtract, different sign, which will give you 9. 13 is bigger, so that will give me -9. And the last step is to go ahead and add the two negative numbers. The answer will stay negative. So if you got -11 for this problem, you're absolutely correct. Now let's look at the fractions. The same rule I'm going to apply to fraction. With the fractions, the key thing is when we're adding or subtracting fractions, the denominator has to be same. So in this case, 4 and 8 are not same. So if you find the LCD for 4 and 8, which we learned previously in section adding, subtracting, fraction, from there you can tell that the LCD is 8. Now in the second fraction, I already have 8. So the only thing I'm going to change is my first fraction. So look at the denominator 4. How do I change 4 into 8? I must multiply my 4 by 2. So the same thing I'm going to do on the top. So whatever you need to do in the bottom, to keep the things consistent, you want to do the same thing on the top. So this will give me -3 times 2 will be 6, and denominator 4 times 2 will be 8. So this is how I get -6 over 8 minus 5 over 8. So 8 and 8, you want to keep your denominator same. And now on the top, you're going to look this as -6. And this is -5. And the plus sign is invisible. So -6 and -5 will give you -11. And then you keep the 8 as is. And that should be your final answer. Now, because it's a fraction, you just have to make sure that if you can reduce it furthermore, you will. Otherwise, just leave the way it is. Let's look at another example on a fraction. So here I have 5 over 8 minus, inside the parenthesis I have 1/2 minus, and then inside the parenthesis I have a -3/4. As you can see on purpose, I have the two negative signs in the parentheses. So you can make it a plus sign from the very beginning if you wish to. And I usually find the LCD for all the three denominators. So in this case, I will find for 8, 2, and 4, and therefore the LCD will be 8. Now 5 over 8 I will not change, so I will change only the 2 and the 4. The 2 I will multiply by 4 here, and the 4 here I'm going to multiply by 2. Okay, and I'll also switch the sign to the plus here. Let's look at this at the next step. So as you can see that I'm multiplying 1/2 by 4 by 4. I changed the 2 negative into a plus sign because of the parenthesis. And the 3/4 I multiply by 2 and 2. So let's go ahead and multiply now and see what we get. So we have 5 over 8 minus 4 over 8 plus 6 over 8. We are still inside the parenthesis. So we're going to get 5 over 8 minus 10 over 8. And this will give me my final answer, -5 over 8. 8 and 8, you want to keep 8. Now keep in mind, we're still applying the rule here. When I subtract 5 minus 10, so I'm doing 5 and I'm doing negative 10, and then plus sign is invisible. So therefore, if you see 5 and negative 10, I subtracted, I got the 5. 10 is bigger in terms of absolute value, and that's how I end up having a negative 5. Let's move on to the phrases. Now, phases of subtraction matters in which order you write the number. Because if you subtract 3 minus 5 and if you subtract 5 minus 3, the answer is completely different. So we have to be very careful which number we write first and which number we write next, especially for the phrases for subtraction. The phrases that I'm going to be using here will be minus, less than, difference between, subtracted from, and decreased by. So first, I'm showing you the phrases that you have to write in the numbers in which the order is appearing. Here's our first one. The difference between negative 4 and a negative 6. So whenever the difference between is used, you just keep the numbers as is, and in between just use the subtraction sign. So this is how you write. So whenever you have the negative and a subtraction sign together, we put the parentheses around always. We don't never put the two signs without a parenthesis. So now, because we do that, so you remember that we have to change the two negative into the plus in the next step. So this will give us a negative 4 plus 10, and the answer will result in a 6. The second phrase that you will write the way it appears will be decreased by. So 8 is my first number, negative 2 is my second number, in between goes my subtraction sign. So once again, because I have a subtraction sign and a negative 2 next to each other, I will use a parenthesis. Of course, on two negatives, you got to switch the sign, make it a plus, and 8 plus 2 will give you 10. The third phrase that I'll be using, which will writing in the same manner, is the phrase minus. So I have a negative 7 and then 3. In between goes the minus sign, the subtraction sign. Now here I don't need a parenthesis because it's only minus sign. So this will be negative 7, negative 3 plus sign invisible. That should give you negative 10. Now let's try the other two phrases. So here I have 7 subtracted from 11. Anytime subtracted from is used, you need to make sure you're taking 7 must be taken from 11. So in this case, we will write the 11 first. So from goes first, if you remember, that will be easy. Anything comes after the word from, you need to write that first. So in this case, I'm going to write 11 and then subtraction sign and then the 7. And that should give me the answer 4. If by mistake somebody wrote 7 minus 11, then you will see that you end up having an answer negative 4, which will be incorrect. Another phrase that you will be writing backwards will be negative 5 less than 9. So in this case, whatever comes after the word then, we will write that first. Or the minus 5 must be taken from 9, so we write the 9 first. Because we're writing the 9 first and negative 5, and in between goes the minus sign, we have to use the parentheses. Two negative signs, again with the parenthesis, switch to plus. And that should give you 14. Now let's try. You can pause here and you can try on your own, and then you come back and see what the answer will look like. The sum of 12 and negative 7 decreased by 14. So first we are adding 12 and negative 7. Whatever answer we get, we're decreasing by 14. So first we write the sum of 12 and negative 7, and that's how we get the 5. So then I will write this 5 decreased by 14. We learned that when the decreased by is used, you want to keep the order same. So the way we will write is as a 5 minus 14. So first thing I did is I added 12 and negative 7 to get 5. And then I'm doing 5 decreased by 14. And that should give me negative 9. Let's try one more. 19 less than, difference between 9 and negative 2. First thing you want to do is find the difference between 19 and negative 2. So first, when you write the difference between 9 and negative 2, you're going to get 9 minus negative 2. You're keeping the same order. That's going to give you 11, right? 9 plus 2, that will give you 11. So then you will write 19 less than 11. Now less than is used, so you want to write 11 first. So if you try to write all at once, there's a chance that you will make a mistake in which order you will write the number. So by doing this in a parts, it will become a little bit easier. So the difference between 9 and negative 2 gave you 11, and then I did 19 less than 11 as 11 minus 19. This is easier to simplify. As I can see, the answer is negative 8.